I see across a lot of clients is a deterioration in self-trust
Yeah.
that seems to happen over the period of time where the marriage is breaking down and then there's a separation. And it seems to kind of track back to, for some clients, like I made the decision to marry this person
Huh.
and then this happened. So now I don't trust myself to make good decisions anymore.
Welcome back to Divorce Coaches Academy podcast. I am Tracy, and today we are exploring one of the most common and often most ethically nuanced questions divorce professionals hear. What should I do? Whether it comes from fear, uncertainty, overwhelm, or simply a desire for reassurance, this question shows up time and time again every day in divorce. Clients are often facing decisions that will impact their finances, their children, their future relationships, and their sense of identity. They want answers. They want certainty. And sometimes they simply just want someone they trust to tell them what to do. At Divorce Coaches Academy, we talk about divorce as a conflict process, not simply a legal process. And nowhere is that more evident than in these moments. When clients ask what they should do, they are often not looking for information alone. They're looking for relief from uncertainty. As professionally trained divorce coaches, we need to understand that our role is not to make decisions for clients. Our role is to help clients think more clearly, better understand their options, engage more effectively in conflict, and move forward in a way that aligns with their own values, priorities, and goals. And to join me for this conversation, bringing a particularly valuable perspective to this conversation, is my friend and colleague, an essential member of the DCA team as an educational mentor and advisor, Lauren Fair. Hi, Lauren.
Hi, Tracy. Thanks for having me back on the podcast.
I'm so happy to have you here. So for those that may not remember or have heard of Lauren, she is many things. She is a certified family law specialist, mediator, family law attorney with more than 17 years of experience helping individuals and families navigate divorce and family law matters. But that's not all she does. In addition to her legal work, Lauren has pursued extensive training in divorce coaching, conflict resolution, co-parenting, and dispute resolution processes because she recognizes what many family law professionals see every single day. Clients often need more than legal guidance alone. They need support and guidance in understanding the process, managing conflict, exploring options, preparing for important conversations, and making decisions in a way that allows them to move forward with confidence. What makes Lauren's perspective especially valuable is that she has sat on both sides of this conversation. Sat, continues to sit. She understands the role and responsibilities of legal counsel, but she also understands the power of education, preparation, and conflict-informed coaching in helping clients make decisions without someone else making those decisions for them. So today we're going to explore where legal advice ends, where coaching begins, and why helping clients build clarity and decision-making capacity, my new favorite word, may be one of the most important services professionals can provide. That's a lot, Lauren.
Yeah, let's do it. I love this topic, Tracy.
Yes, good. All right, so let's just dive in, right? As both an attorney and a divorce coach, how have you seen this question, what should I do, show up differently in those different roles from those different seats?
Sure. Yeah. I think as an attorney, when I have a client that asks me what to do, I think it has always been about like the client perceiving that I, as the professional, have more information than they do. I think that I have particularized expertise and experience in it. And so they're really looking for more of like an expert opinion about
Mm,
what they should do. I think that's how I viewed it, at least from my perspective as an
yeah.
attorney.
Hmm.
And then in the coaching role, I think it's a little different though.
Yeah. So what does that look like in the coaching role?
Yeah. I think in the coaching role, I I perceive that question just differently. I think there's some overlap where I think they do perceive the coach also, right, to be more
Hmm.
experienced, to have more information that they do. And, that's why they're hiring you, right? You're the
Yeah.
professional to help guide them. And so sometimes they want your input from your expert kind of position of what they should do at that particular point. But I think it goes beyond that. And this is part of I think the shift for me from being in solely an attorney role versus having that coaching experience is I can see beyond that
Mm,
first impression of like, oh, they just want this expert opinion, right? That might be it. And I think oftentimes it is. Like there's at least an element of it that is them wanting that expertise. But I think it can be other things. Like for example, it can be a lack of self trust around decision making that has developed for different reasons. It
yeah.
could be like this is the client's way of making decisions. Like they're used to in their life making decisions through like polling other people
Yeah.
or from maybe even the spouse that they're separating from may have been like their person that they went to talk through decisions, and now without that person they might feel like a fish out of water to an extent about like, well, now what do I do, right, with
Yeah.
decision making? I need to find someone else now to ask what I
Yeah.
should do. um so I think it also could just be overwhelm, right? It could be that the client needs support in figuring out what they want to consider in their decision making process, having more awareness brought to what their decision making process is, or maybe
Mm,
it's how it's shifted in the transition, and figuring out what else they might need to know in order to make a decision. So maybe you are providing some information, right, that they need in order to make a decision, or you're helping them articulate where else they need to get that information from. But with that information, perhaps they actually might be able to make their own decision, right? So to me, it's a lot more nuanced, right, when you're looking at it from a coaching role.
absolutely. And I think your point about having somebody else, right? If their entire marriage was based on having that source of support or guidance in decision making, and now they don't have that, I also recognize that for a lot of clients, they don't feel very comfortable having some of these big questions regarding money and kids with family or friends, especially if they feel it's a little more private or seeking a more confidential process in that. So
Mm-hmm.
there's not a lot of access to people. And I also think, one of the things that we talk about is, why somebody might want someone else to tell them what to do during divorce, aside from the complete lack of perhaps understanding about the process or what that process looks like. There's that fear, and that fear shows up sometimes of, you know, almost not wanting to bear the responsibility of what if I make the wrong decision?
Right. Yeah.
And that carries a really, really heavy load. And I don't know about you, but sometimes if I'm polling and the majority of people says I should do this and I go with that. And then if it didn't work out the way I wanted, I'm like, I have somebody else to say, well, they told me to do that. I wouldn't have, right? And we can sort of, I don't want to say scapegoat it, but sort of relieve ourselves from the outcome of that decision. What are your
Right.
thoughts on that? Why clients want someone else to tell them what to
Yeah.
do?
I
Course.
think sometimes that is the case. I'm not sure that it's always conscious, right? That might be why they're doing it, but that can be under the surface, potentially what it is. And
Hmm.
I think one theme I see across a lot of clients is a deterioration in self trust
Yeah.
that seems to happen over the period of time where the marriage is breaking down and then there's a separation. And it seems to kind of track back to, for some clients, like, I made the decision to marry this person,
Huh.
and then this happened. So now I don't trust myself to make good decisions anymore because this is not what I saw happening from my life. And
Mm.
based upon my decision to hire this person, or to hire them, to
Yeah.
marry them, then this is the outcome that I now have, right? And so, especially if there's betrayal involved,
Yeah.
it's like, okay, I didn't see it, I should have seen it. Like, I don't trust myself in many areas, and so that can bleed over, I think, into making decisions in the divorce process.
Yeah. Such
Mhm.
a significant one, I think. The other thing to that trust factor, right? I often see clients who also don't trust themselves because they stayed in the marriage, right?
Mm,
Not only how do I trust myself because I married this person and here I am in those betrayal processes, but also, how did I stay so long in this
mhm.
process, in this, and trusting myself now to even to go forward with that divorce process, sort of that lack of confidence in being able to effectively navigate something that does have some potential impacts in a variety of different ways, but the impact that they've also exposed themselves to in staying in the marriage well beyond the point of which they knew that they needed to get out.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think I think there's so many things that are so individually driven with our clients based upon their histories and their marriage and their process in decision making. I also think that one of the things that is evident is just people's lack of experience in decision making, and not only that decision making, but a value based decision making process, which is a little different than also because in divorce, as we're navigating these big value decisions about children, about finances, about identity, we don't have a whole hell of a lot of experience in doing that. I mean, can you think of anything in your life where you've had that many decisions to make with such impact? I don't know.
No, I don't think so. And I think, we just don't typically have a good understanding of how we make decisions until we're prompted to look at that.
Yeah.
I think coaches can offer that to their clients when appropriate, to really look at, what is my decision making process, and do I like that, right? Or is that something that developed over time because
Hmm.
of the dynamics of the marriage or just experiences that they had, and is that something that they want to carry forward? Like, is that really helping them to make the best decisions now, or is there another way that they want to go about it?
Yeah. Well, and when we talk about sort of divorce being all of this fear, which we often say are questions waiting to be asked and answered, this uncertainty coupled with high emotion, right? One of the things that we do as divorce coaches is support an educational process. So, how do you see education helping reduce fear for clients?
I view it as education is just power, right? I
Yeah.
think that it helps them in a couple ways. One is that I find that clients who are particularly at the beginning of a process where they don't have maybe a lot of interaction yet with professionals involved in the process, right? Maybe it's like the marriage is broken down, things are not good, and there's threats being made maybe in that
Yeah.
dynamic. And
Hmm.
that's one place where I see oftentimes a lot of fear creep up, and there not be, sometimes, like you talk about staying longer. I think that's a result sometimes of those types of interactions. Things are said, you're never going to see the kids, you're not going to get a dime, like that kind of thing. And so some of those dynamics play into why somebody stays longer in
Yeah.
certain situations. And so I find that, whether it's in an attorney role or in a coaching role, after I've met with a client who has been in that type of situation, or even if they're not in a situation where they're being threatened, I think in that situation, it's more just overwhelmed. Like, I've never been through this process and I don't even know where to start, and, all of that. I think the education allows them, to, in the former case, just kind of debunk the potential likelihood of those threats being carried out, right? So like, okay, I need to know, is that really going to happen? Am I really going to get zero
Mhm.
support? Am I really going to, never see my kids again? Right. And then once you are able to get more education around those types of issues, then it just starts to, I think, increase the client's power in those dynamics, like because they have the power of the education around it, so that, okay, then if they're threatened in the future, it doesn't produce the same reaction in them because,
Yeah.
they know what the facts are. I think the other thing is when, particularly like in the overwhelm situation where it's just like, I don't know what I don't know here. I think, and even in the other situation too, where there's more kind of an active threat dynamic, um, when we don't know something and it's overwhelming, I think the brain makes it seem even scarier, right? Like sometimes like the unknown is just more scary than actually knowing something, even if it's not the answer we want.
Yeah.
So if we can just take unknown factors and make them more known to a degree, then
Hmm.
even if it's something that we don't necessarily like knowing what it is allows the brain then I think to shift more into problem solving mode. Like, okay, I know this is the risk, right? If I move forward, or I know that this is what I'm looking at if I make this choice. Okay, so even if I don't like that result, it wouldn't be my preference.
Hmm.
How can I now take action to make the best of that, right? Or it's just kind of, I think it just brings down the fear to have more concreteness to what the future looks like, as opposed to when you don't, I think you run the risk of it being made scarier than it really is.
Yeah, we can catastrophize it, right?
Mhm.
We can take all of these fears and threats and couple them together, and it's like the boogie monster. Right. There was a study about people getting electric shocks. I don't remember who did the behavioral assessment, but the groups had a choice, right? That they could get actually money if they were part of a group that didn't know whether they were going to get shocked or not. If you chose to be part of the group that you knew you were going to get shocked, those people, you wouldn't get the money. Everybody chose, the majority of people chose to know when they were going to get shocked, right?
Mhm.
Because we brace ourselves. If I know what's expected or what's coming, I can brace myself or prepare myself for that process. And I think that is why it is such a key component of education in helping clients understand, be able to reality test and explore some of those threats and those um, more amorphous things that may be said or utilized or weaponized against people in the divorce process. So, as we're talking about this education piece, right? From your perspective, what do you see this difference between educating clients so they can better understand their options, right? Again, because we're not making decisions for them versus advising them on which option to choose.
Mhm. Yeah. I see laying out the options as kind of like a platter for the client, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm explaining to them all of the different choices that are on the platter for selection. And
Mm-hmm.
then asking questions of them to help elicit factors that would help the client be able to figure out which one of these would be the best match for me. So sometimes like in a coaching role that might look like, asking them questions around like values, priorities, desired outcomes, desired experiences of the process itself,
Mm-hmm.
and then kind of explaining here what the different options are, and then potentially reflecting back things I've heard that might be more a match for one option versus the other,
Mm-hmm.
and then checking in with the client. Like, if you lay out options, okay, after I've done that, are there any that kind of jump out at you right away as ones that seem more like aligned with what you're looking for? And then check in with what their understanding is and kind of reflect back some things that they've shared that might be helpful for them to hear, might be in alignment with a particular option over another, versus like telling the client what to do. I think sometimes when people do that, one, they don't lay out what all the options are, so the client actually never even knows that there are other options.
Yeah. It may be more like somewhat, and again, I'm not um, saying this is true for all attorneys, but what my experience is a lot of is sometimes it's a very black and white, right? We don't look at all of these sort of shades of gray in between. Some of these options that are often more in line with statute or what can and cannot be proven in a court of law, if you will.
Right. Yeah, definitely. I think an important thing that a coach can help clients see is that legal advice is one factor among others potentially in their decision making process. And I think it's a shift for attorneys too to even see, okay, like the legal advice or what the law would do, what the court would do on this issue, right? Is just that's a factor, but
A
that
fact?
doesn't have to be the only one, you
No,
know?
I think it's such an important piece, right? It's one component. It is one factor that needs to be taken into consideration, but there are so many other factors at play.
Yeah. Love it.
Have you
I
have you
think
found? Oh, okay, go ahead.
Oh no, sorry. I was just gonna say, like, I would just was having this conversation the other day in our mentee group. It's like I think when you don't prompt the client to look at what else may be important for them, it's just you're just missing so much of the good stuff for the client to really explore that will lead them to make better decisions ultimately.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's like really, we often talk about that discovery process, right? As an archaeological dig, as we're using our powerful, curious questions as divorce coaches for the client to start developing greater awareness of their feeling and their thinking and how their thinking and feeling is impacting their behavior, which is ultimately impacting their ability to make decisions and moving forward or what that would look like for them. And when we don't take the time to really do that, there are missed opportunities because you can't come in with a jackhammer. You're just going to miss it,
Hmm.
right? And that work, it does take a little longer, but I think as you were saying earlier in regards to the education piece, being able to understand the process and then being able to have better clarity around what's important to me, what my needs, interests, what my why is, what I'm looking at accomplishing moving forward, that's the secret sauce, right? When you can sort of take it all together and the client now has this education and understanding, can demystify some of those barriers or look greater opportunities, now aligning it with sort of that discovery of understanding what is significant to them, then it kind of funnels into that process of being able to support intentional and informed decision making, which I think is the work that we absolutely try to do in divorce coaching. So, have you found that clients sometimes mistake clarity for direction? Right? In other words, wanting somebody to tell them what to do versus helping them understand what matters most to them.
Yes, I think so, and I think it just comes from overwhelm a lot of the time, you know,
Mm,
and just wanting out of it. Like if somebody can just sort of help me make this decision, right, then I can be out of it. But it's like
yeah.
I think part of what our role should be is recognizing that the client, right, in the right scenario is a whole person who's capable of making the best decision for them if they
Mm,
have the education that they need and the support that they need, right, to make those decisions during a really difficult emotional time, you know.
yeah. Yeah.
So, I think clients can see once they have that education and that support in the space, right, to make that decision that they're able to do that
Mm.
without being told. Because really at the end of the day, like I don't think any of us really want to be told what to do necessarily.
Tell you
It's
that's a no for me, Lauren. I do not like being told what to do, which is no surprise to anybody listening out there. Who knows
yeah.
me? Yeah. No, I don't. I agree. I think people don't like to be told what to do. I think sometimes it is an easier if this gets me right to the other side faster, then I might do it. But I feel like being told often then results in a lot of regret or resentment or carrying forth a lot of baggage related to that process.
Right. Yeah. I think it's really important for the client to own the decisions that they're making, in the divorce. And they can do that well. They can be set up well to do that, right, through the work that they're doing with the coach.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So as someone with both legal and divorce coach training, right, you've got the amazing perspective from both sides. What have you learned about the importance of staying within scope while still being highly valuable to clients? I'm talking about us as divorce coaches staying within our scope and not teetering over to legal advisement, the unauthorized practice of law, or somehow misleading clients as to whether their quote unquote opinion can be constituted as legal scope creep.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's really important, particularly for the advancement of divorce coaching in the industry, for coaches to stay in their lane so that they are more readily accepted onto the team, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And I think too, it's important for clients that they're not confused about who is doing what, and that they're not in a situation where they have one professional kind of stepping on the toes of another one.
Yeah.
Particularly if you're, a coach who's not an attorney and not able to give legal advice. I mean, that's not only a legal problem,
Yeah.
but it also is confusing for the client, right? To the extent maybe that conflicts with something that the attorney said, and that can create more challenge for a client who's already trying to navigate different people's opinions, right? Those might be lay opinions from family members and friends and stuff, right? And then in addition to opinions they're getting from an attorney. And then, I think if you're veering out of your lane, you're making that even more challenging for the client to know what the right thing is. But it's important if you want to work on a team with attorneys, with financial professionals, et cetera. Everybody's got to stay in their own lane
Yeah.
for the professionals to want to continue to do that with you.
100%. That professional trust and respect has to be earned, right? It has to be demonstrated and earned so that we can continue to move the field forward. We just did a continuing ed lunch and learn this week on micro boundaries and divorce coaching, and sort of it's these small violations, right? The large violations are easy to pick out, right? It's these small violations that build upon each other that is the real concern that I see within divorce coaching. And then that could be something as simple as a client saying, hey, what do you think about this parenting plan? Right? And now this coach in a small micro boundary way may give their opinion
Mm-hmm.
on the parenting plan. And again, not our role. Our role is not to give an opinion or advisement on a parenting plan. And yet it's very nuanced, because if the ultimate goal is for the client to get clarity on what their opinion is, does that parenting plan align with the things that they were talking about in the work that they were doing, in understanding the legal advisement that they were perhaps given in regards to decision making, in alignment with what they shared as their interests or concerns for their children. We then can utilize the power of the work that we do in an exploratory process of helping the client then ask that question of themselves. But it simply takes the divorce coach not stepping over that boundary and shifting it and being able to say, I love that you're interested in what my thoughts are, but I'm interested in what your thoughts are. What came up for you when you looked at that parenting plan? How do you think that parenting plan or the terms in your parenting plan represented what your intentions were in your proposal negotiations? I mean, I can go on and on and on and give a list. So there is this way, because what I think doesn't matter. And I'm sorry, but I even would potentially say the same for legal advisement. What matters most is what that client is doing with that information. Right. And how it shows up and how they're moving forward. Certainly legal advice is essential as they're navigating a legal process of divorce. But then we extend beyond that, right? It's not just covered by these simple statutes, and no court is telling you all how to show up as co-parents.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I mean, I can go on a diatribe of that. Oh, yeah, no one needs to hear any more of my thoughts on that, right? So as divorce coaching continues to evolve, why do you think professionalism, competency, and ethical boundaries matter to the future of the field, right? We just talked about that trust building, demonstrated competency with professionals. Now we're talking about this trajectory of the work that we do in divorce coaching, which I believe is growing by leaps and bounds every single day as clients are becoming more consumer savvy.
Oh, I.
So
Hmm.
yeah, I mean the studies about how many people are even self-represented. A study out of California where it's nearly 80% of clients are at least one party is being self-represented. So people are becoming more educated also in their role as a client or a consumer in the divorce industry, which is $1 billion industry. I think people are becoming more budget savvy also in terms of saying, I don't want to take my kids' college fund and toss it over to a bunch of professionals in that way. So, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I agree. I see that's the same trends, and certainly have had wealthy clients who can afford to spend a lot on the divorce, who are just choosing to go through a different process. Like they don't want to spend a lot of money on that, even if they have plenty of money for the college
Yeah,
fund. Like,
yeah,
but is this really necessary? Is this what we want to do with our money? And more importantly, like, is this what we want to do to our family? And I think
mm-mm,
more people are being more mindful about how conflict is handled
yeah,
and opting for different processes. And so I think as that continues to be a shift that we're making, the role of coaches in being, competent and professional and
mm,
ethical is really it's really critical. I
critical.
think, I can remember back to when I first heard about a divorce coach. This was a long time ago. This was before DCA existed, and I had been working in family law for a long time at that point, and I had never heard of a divorce coach. I never heard of a client who had one, any colleagues who knew of anything about it. And I had a friend say, "Oh, hey, I know this divorce coach who's in my networking group. You should connect with her. She could be a resource for you." And my immediate reaction as an attorney at that point was like, I wasn't open to it, and the reason was because I didn't know what they were. There was no, the education around that or awareness like there is
Yeah,
starting to be a lot more of now.
mhm,
And also because my perception in an uneducated way at the time was that this would be somebody who wasn't professional, but just sort of like knew enough to be dangerous and would just be
mm,
like problematic in the process.
yeah,
And if I had understood that this person was going to stay in their lane, that they were a professional, ethical, competent, and actually a support to a client, particularly in high conflict situations as an attorney, to have somebody supporting clients like that would be a huge benefit.
yeah,
Um, and I think, if those things had been clear, I would have had a very different reaction back then. But it took a long time to kind of, better understand. And so I offer that just to say there are a lot of attorneys who still are of that mindset, right? They don't understand it. They're worried about their toes being stepped on. They're worried about people not being professional. And
mhm,
so it makes it so much more important for us to hold high standards, right, for divorce coaches so that they can continue to be on the team, be in the rooms, right, where they can be really impactful because they're so needed in the industry.
yeah,
And I think attorneys are becoming more open to it, and we just need to continue to send the right message, right,
yeah.
around the presence of a divorce coach on the team.
Yeah, and raising the standards. I mean, for as many family law attorneys in my work that I have encountered that do have some concerns about toe stepping and people giving legal advice or telling clients what to do, that's going to be counterintuitive to what they would tell their client, right? I'm also seeing some exciting advancements in family law practices and these new sort of limited scope practices that are bringing on divorce coaches as part of their practice. And Lauren, you've been doing such amazing work in setting a standard for this. And Lauren also leads out of our DCA community, facilitates a group of just family law attorneys and other attorneys who are duly certified as divorce coaches, because I think there's a really amazing path that we're seeing move forward. That's different than that was modeled on the collab law process. Right. This is sort of more of a more comprehensive, holistic approach to the work that we all are doing and all have a space for with clients, and supporting them in minimizing conflict, preserving families, preserving people's health and sanity, both professionally and for our clients. So there's lots of work to do, and I am so happy to have you as part of the pioneers leading this, because it's still pioneer land, right? We're still kind of in the Wild West, and we're kind of staking down land as they're crossing this terrain. So I want to thank you so much, Lauren, for joining us today and for sharing your perspective. One of the themes that stood out, I think, throughout this conversation is that helping clients does not require us to tell them what to do. In fact, some of the most meaningful support we can provide comes from helping clients better understand their options, identify what matters most to them, navigate conflict more effectively, and to really be able to develop the confidence to make decisions on their own, right? And this distinction between education and advice is really important, because between support and direction, right? But perhaps most importantly is helping clients build their own capacity, which is what creates that lasting confidence long after the divorce process ends. So, as the field of divorce coaching continues to evolve as a profession, conversations like this become increasingly important. Professionalism, demonstrated competency, ethical boundaries, a clear understanding of scope are not limitations on our work. It is what strengthens the profession and allows us to be able to provide meaningful value to the clients that we serve. And I also think Lauren's professional journey reflects something we're seeing more and more throughout our family law community. Right? Lauren was already an accomplished family law attorney when she first pursued divorce coach training. Yet, like many professionals working in and around divorce, she recognized that clients often need more than legal information and wanted something else for herself more professionally. Right? We can support navigating conflict and managing uncertainty and preparing for difficult conversations and understanding options and on and on and on, with such better processes for clients to be able to do this for themselves. So I want to thank you all so much for joining us. If you are interested in developing these skills, whether you're an attorney or a mediator, mental health professional, financial professional, or someone looking to build a divorce coaching practice, the next US and Canada-based ADR divorce coach certification training program is going to begin at the end of the summer, August 23rd, with Australia and New Zealand following closely, and then the Arabian Gulf in September. So please feel free to check it out at divorcecoachesacademy.com. Lauren, I want to thank you again for sharing your insight and experience with our listeners. We're so happy to have you. Thanks. And we thank everyone listening. Until next time, please remember that our value is not found in telling clients what to do. Our value is found in helping them better understand. So I want to thank you so much.